Achilles heel by yours truly. Attention all bar/non-bar members. Note, bar members refers to all beings who are oathed to the Crown/Temple Bar and are therefore foreign agents, citizens of the City of London State, aliens, with special use of Crown copyright as outlined by the Crown Corporation Board of Directors. Non-bar members do not have use of Crown copyright, and anyone using any Crown copyrighted intellectual property are, in fact, committing fraud by omission, commission, knowingly, unknowingly, where all are doing so are guilty of unclean hands. Listen up, cops. That's you. And you're on our side, by the way. You just don't know it. Inasmuch as ignorance is not a defense of the law, it is incumbent upon all claims to prove intent of that ignorance, and furthermore, to prove the intent of all parties who are attempting to maintain, reinforce that ignorance, to control a monopoly over humankind. A crime is not a crime unless all assumption and presumption is nullified, where one is guilty or innocent via willful intent only. With that out of the way, let's get busy exposing the Achilles heel of the legal system as it pertains to Admiralty law, Phoenician law, upon which all legal matters are based. Where the spoken word, phonics, is fraught with assumption and presumption, I'm going to spell it out for you. As a quick example of the wordplay, phonics, that is the art of the Magi Straits, where assumption and presumption can be interpreted in many ways, let's see how a presiding judge can be interpreted to have intent to kill, shall we? An innocuous word like presiding, as used in presiding judge, can be presumed merely as someone sitting at the bench. With the prefix of pre, which means prior to or before, the word preside becomes before side, as in choosing a side beforehand. In phonics, the sound of side is also spelled C-I-D-E, as in homicide, genocide, infanticide, etc., which means to kill. That means the word preside, or preside with the C, can be interpreted to mean to before kill, or as in presiding before killing. Such is the true nature of Phoenician Admiralty law. Therefore, it can be proven with intent that all presiding judges have intent with premeditation to kill or commit murder by omission, commission, where ignorance of this fact is not a defense, and where ignorance of this fact renders all judges incompetent who shall claim ignorance. Catch-22, where a presiding judge is damned if they do, damned if they don't claim ignorance, and make amends to be free of the unclean hands. See the following excerpt from Black's Law, 9th edition. Clean Hands Doctrine. The principle that a party cannot seek equitable relief or assert an equitable defense if that party has violated an equitable principle such as good faith. Such a party is described as having unclean hands. For example, Section 8 of the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Act contains an unclean hands provision that forbids a court from exercising jurisdiction in a child custody suit in certain situations, as when one party has wrongfully removed a child from another state, aka the Crown, has improperly retained custody of a child after visitation, aka the Crown, or has wrongfully removed a child from the person with custody, aka the Crown. The clean hands doctrine evolved from the discretionary nature of equitable relief in the English courts of equity, such as chancery, also termed unclean hands doctrine. Enough said. While it appears to me that the vast majority of lawyers, judges, police, government officials, etc., are vastly ignorant of what the legal world is all about, it's time for you to get educated, and I simply ask that you disprove, if you can, what you are about to read in commonly understood English, where Phoenician law, assumption, presumption is hereby, heretofore, nullified ab initio. It has been nearly 3 years since a judge bowed to me in an open court and witnessed now by countless millions. It is rather unfortunate that the vast majority of lawyers, judges, police officials, government officials, etc., are owned by their egos and greed, their status and perceived elevated level of self-importance. I have met many of you that have been bought and paid for, and many of you have inflicted great harm to myself, my family, and countless other members of humanity via this greed and pure insanity. The well in which you drink from is filled by the blood of your fellow humans, rendering those drinking both cannibals and vampires of the lowest order. It matters not to me if you stop reading this, because my intent is already in place, immovable, unstoppable, and indestructible, such is the way of natural, universal law, where all man-made laws are merely mimics distorting truth. It is much easier to control people via their ignorance and greed with man-made justifiers like, I'm just doing my job, or I was just following orders, etc., ad nauseum. Unfortunately, for you, a mirror exists, and I am that mirror, where you will get to see yourself as you truly are. In short, the whole system you worship is based in fraud absolute, with intent to deceive, and, like universal law, there is no statute of limitations on fraud, period. Only intense greed, selfishness, willingness to harm others, etc. keeps you under control of your masters. Please feel free to investigate me and my story, and all the information shared here. You can also reach me, the unnamed, in voice, via my cell phone at 226-971-9675, where my voice is mine, unique only to myself in frequency, where no id entity exists. Here are a few facts you'll need to disprove. 1. All registrations become the sole property of the Crown Corporation, such as living people, corporations, cars, banks, homes, money, etc., by willful ignorant of the facts. By a willful ignorant of the facts act. 2. All names are Crown-owned copyright. Note, COC, or as I will refer to it, COC. And any all use of such names without express consent of the Crown Corporation, UPU, Vatican City State, et al., is, in fact, a criminal act of stolen identity, fraud. 3. The birth certificate is proof of intent to aid and abet the user of such document to commit fraud unknowingly, via deception, where any all registry buildings, offices are the proof of premeditated intent to do so by virtue of them simply being in existence. 4. Any all use of the birth certificate, long and short forms, to procure any all identification where using the name upon it is claimed, is a stolen identity and counterfeit in nature. 5. Any all contracts entered into using the name, assuming the name, are null and void ab initio, nunc pro tunc, where the party that offers the contract is guilty of aiding and abetting the other party into commission of fraud. As an example, any all banks that offer a mortgage, death pledge, contract, are in fact aiding and abetting knowingly, unknowingly, by commission, omission, another into a fraudulent contract, and are guilty with intent, where ignorance is not a plea of defense. 6. Any all claims of ownership of any all things registered is, in fact, a proclamation of theft, where one is already in possession of stolen property by virtue of the registration. As an example, if one were to hand over an ownership registration document of a car with a birth certificate name on it, one is already guilty of theft and aids and abets their own guilt by doing so. 7. Any all parties that carry licenses. Now there's a list of things here that you need to read from Black's Law, but a couple of things that I want to point out to. The legality of an act, especially of a sacrament. Licity is distinguished from validity in ecclesiastical law. Pay attention. Although an act or some part of it may be illegal, hint, hint, its performance or effects may be valid. That, in a nutshell, says that every law and act on the books that are man-made are, in fact, illegal. License, which is a noun from the 15th century, comes from the word licentious. A basic and brief understanding of licentious is that one who carries a license is saying that I am licentious, or a sexually or morally depraved criminal. Enjoy your licenses. License, a permission usually revocable to commit some act that would otherwise be unlawful. I'll read that again. 15th century, it's a noun, license. A permission usually revocable to commit some act that would otherwise be unlawful. Basically, it's a license to commit crimes. Any license. Continuing, especially an agreement not amounting to a lease or profit prondra, that it is lawful for the licensee to enter the licensor's land to do some act that would otherwise be illegal, such as hunting, game. Here's the catch. See servitude. Licensee from 1864. One to whom a license is granted. 2. One who has permission to enter or use another's premises, but only for one's own purposes and not for the occupier's benefit. The occupier, I put this in bold, the occupier has a duty to warn the licensee of any dangerous conditions known to the occupier, but unknown to the licensee. An example of a licensee is a social guest. Well, let me make it very clear to the Crown, the occupier, the foreign agents from the City of London State, who are the occupiers. They have a duty to warn the licensee, us, of any dangerous conditions, i.e. committing fraud by using a name, known to the occupier. Well, of course they know about it. They printed the fucking birth certificates, right? But unknown to the licensee. Well, of course it's unknown to us because they didn't want to tell us. They would rather us walk around in ignorance, committing crime after crime after crime, thereby rendering them in full honor at all points. Not anymore. Tables turn. Catch-22. Jesus is in your temple. He's having a field day. Pretty cool guy. I liked him. Author's note. Me being the author. The Crown Corporation / Board of Directors / bar members / oath to Crown Corporation agents, etc., is deemed occupier by virtue of any all registrations, whereas any all parties that carry, demand any all licenses are, in fact, aiding and abetting the other party into an act of fraud, knowingly, unknowingly, by commission, omission, where commissioned officers do so knowingly by default and are guilty by commission. And you wondered why they called them commissioned officers. Well, now you know. It's about commissioning of a crime. It's not about money. 8. Any all persons employed by, for any all governments, courts, churches, etc., are commissioned officers, by virtue of title, rank, office, paid by a Crown-registered corporation, as evidenced by paycheck. Proof's in the pudding, boys and girls. That's your deal with the devil. You take a paycheck, you're owned. Time to change that up, eh? Carrying on. As you can see, it's quite a tricky little web of deceit that has all non-bar members feeding on themselves for the explicit benefit of the bar members. This is commonly referred to as divide and conquer, where a third-party interloper instigates a silent war, getting their opponent to feed on itself. As an allegorical example, imagine 2 teams on a soccer field. One team has only bar members, and the other consists of those duped into serving the bar team alongside their non-bar member teammates. So let's put a mayor, a couple of cops, a few IRS, CRA employees alongside the minority of their typical non-bar member teammates. The whistle blows and the game starts. Every time a bar team member player gets the ball, they pass it to one of their duped servants of non-bar status, where that individual kicks the ball into their own net every time. Who wins the game? This is why in a courtroom the bar cannot pursue. Prosecute means do not pursue any living soul, and must rely upon the ignorance of those they are fleecing to get us to fleece ourselves by claiming use of a name that belongs to the Crown. The nifty part is that they use other parts of our society to do their dirty work for them to maintain universal honor in a guiltless veneer. Oh, sorry, the jig is up. I find it laughable now that so many in the system that are paid by the Crown, that's all government by affiliation jobs are content with their table scraps they get tossed. Yes, they are high-ranked officials. They get larger scraps, but they will never own the castles, only the gatehouses as a result. What would it mean to you if you never had to pay off your fraud mortgage, your fraud car loan, etc., because doing so is, in fact, fraud? If you ever wondered what making a deal with the devil was all about, well, now you know. Those that serve the bar as non-bar slaves will only ever be slaves, and that includes the militaries, government employees, cops, etc., regardless of your treats you get in rank or title. You are the fools who think you're free and are the most enslaved as a result. You see, with this truth, all bar members are now castrated and powerless without the means to get us to be the name they so desperately need. Without a claim and fraud to a name, the Crown Bar Temple is without joinder. One must confess to being a criminal, more so than them, for them to maintain their veil of honor. I would suggest going to a website that I post much information on this in greater detail. That's kateofgaia.wordpress.com. Inasmuch as Kate of Gaia is not a registered name per se, it is merely a persona that I choose to use, where my true name, Wei, will never be known to anyone but myself, and will never be given, only acknowledged as required, where my voice is mine alone, all one. It is also not my concern that you or anyone does what anyone does with what I am sharing. I seek no vengeance, since it is the realm of warlike fools. What anyone does with truth is up to them to either accept it or defy it, and perpetuate their crimes knowingly, or seek to make amends with those they have harmed. Quite simple, really. As a heads up, my website is not for those suffering from or of system-induced mental retardation, since it requires acceptance of truth, not some limited, installed by others, belief. It's quite obvious that this world is insane on many levels, unless you think warring on innocence, poverty, starvation, earth destruction, etc. is a good thing. It won't take a psychiatrist to tell you what a 5-year-old child already knows. If so, then you're a prime candidate for losing on smarter than a 5th grader, since you're acting less than one. It is up to you to decide which team you are on and which team you truly play for, because until you do, the third-party interlopers will eventually destroy us all, and you'll be helping them do it. Yep, that's pretty insane if you ask me. How many homes must you steal? How many families must you destroy? And how many children must you aid and abet in killing before you finally wake up to your crimes? I know firsthand of many of you, and your intent to commit harm and crimes for some filthy lucre. How much use will you be to your masters once you have helped them kill all those of us seeking to wake you and the rest of humanity up? You will be as the former prisoner turned coat into a guard in a concentration camp against your own kind, with the dubious honor of being killed last, once your usefulness is gone. You are blinded by your greed, conditioned by the dumbing down of education systems you were raised in. Have a look at a pre-1913 grade 8 exam as compared to today, and you'll see just how dumbed down you are. Your history books are written for you to deceive. Your English rules condemn you with your own words, and the plot is far thicker than you could ever imagine. I have looked some of you in the eye, shook your hands while you were thrusting a knife in my back. You told me I'm just doing my job as you stole my home, and you said I have a family to feed as you shredded mine, kidnapping me and them at gunpoint, and destroying my ability to feed them as you stole my belongings and tools of survival. All this and more while you knew fully I was right, because I had shown you. My anger turned very quickly to pity for those literal children you sent to my house when I dared to return to my home 2 weeks after it was stolen. It saddened me to know that so many young people had been conned by their superiors who knew full well and admitted as such. Just ask former Deputy Chief of Police for Guelph Police Services, Brent Eden, why he was suicidal and left the force after the minimum mandatory 3 years for his retirement package. His soul is worth $75,000 per annum with that act of cowardice. You may want to investigate former Police Chief Robert Davis as to why he left 2 weeks into my 28-day illegal incarceration and solitary confinement. You may want to ask Phil Andrews, editor-in-chief of the Guelph Daily Mercury, as to his role in smearing me where once upon a time I was a shining star in music to his paper. It saddens me to know that on the Saturday night of my second violent kidnapping, the kids were likely out drinking and celebrating what they had done, especially the large young black man that all the other kitty cops stood behind as he smashed my door in, dragged me out by the hair, removing large clumps as he stood proudly crushing my wrist and windpipe with his boots. Yes, much to be proud of these children. A singing, songwriting, transgendered being must be quite a threat, it seems, especially one that never raised their voice or hand to any of them. Alas, those deeds will be returned in kind. Universal law says so. Take some time to investigate the illegal unlawful land transfer of 7 Dalebrook Place, Guelph, Ontario, Canada, N1E1A7. Note, COC, where no number, no address, no mailbox existed when I lived there. Remove your mailbox and see how long it takes for a UPU representative to show up with a notice to reinstall one. You see, anything sent via the UPU/post office anywhere in the world is deemed a contract with merely the intent to send it, because your mailbox is deemed automatic acceptance because you have one. Yes, anything you receive in the mail is deemed a contract already before you even open it. Oh, and that means email as well, since you have an email address and mailbox that you willfully created or accepted with intent to do so. In short, you were served contract, and I know it's already deemed accepted, and why I don't care if I receive a response or not. Any good bar lawyer in London will tell you, as they did to me, here it is all about contract, and I quote him as stated to me. You may want to investigate the British High Consulate and ask where former employee Page is, since he was moved from there shortly after I got an emergency passport on my terms to take my father's ashes back to Ireland, where I was born, and where he wished to be buried with my mother. Ask them why I was denied further help when my home was stolen 6 months later. You see, I already know the answers to all these questions and countless more that will defy your conditioned and mind-controlled mentality. No, it's quite simple, really. You have been duped into serving a master that wants you to feed on your own kind, and do it with vim and vigor, as you suck greedily on the tits of the whore of Babylon, commerce, merchant, admiralty, Phoenician law. As a real mind-bender, you may want to seek answers to how a document with a mistake on it magically corrects itself while sealed in a safe that was served on my life partner, now ex, the night of the illegal SWAT raid and kidnappings of me and my family witnessed by her and a private bailiff who was holding the document. That includes the actual scans on my computer, but not before the original had been emailed to KRMC, so you may want to start there. Don't get your hopes up, though, because there are a few that also know, and will try to keep that little secret all to themselves. Well, not such a secret anymore. All you need do is Google Kate of Gaia, and you'll see just how busy this little beaver has been in exposing the multitudes of frauds perpetrated by the Bar Society and its masters. Feel free to tune in any night, since I do a radio show 7 nights a week, with double-ups on some days, with other well-known radio stations. You see, I have no fear of truth, nor of liars and thieves. I have witnessed the shame and fear of lawyers and judges up close and personal, and I have been astute in observation of the effects truth and I have on these actors, liars. The biggest fear of those in true power over this dominion is, if but one shall awaken, we are doomed. Well, here I am, and there are countless millions more now, with the numbers growing exponentially and peacefully, much to the chagrin of those wanting us to wage war further upon ourselves. You have received this binding contract as outlined in the laws of man you serve. It matters not what you do from here on, but be cautioned. What ye sow, so shall ye reap. What ye have already sown is now coming to harvest. Think long and hard about your choices past and now present. There is but one rule in this universe, and it's the only one that matters to me. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The choice now is yours, and it is simple where, either way. You are accountable inasmuch as by your actions you are known. My grandfather told me long ago that once you make your bed, you have to lie in it. As for me, I am not a corporation, nor will I be aided and abetted into it. No, the Temple Bar tables have been turned now, and the only document I will carry is the one that will force you to commit fraud if you use it, where it was used to aid and abet me into fraud if I did. I will give back to you, the servant of Baal, the only document the cock gives without asking, and rather demands it be taken, and that is proof of fraud, called the birth certificate. The fact that it exists is all the proof, physical evidence of intent to commit fraud that I or anyone else needs, where the legal fiction world only needed us to claim it as our own and create our own fraudulent identities ourselves. You can continue to practice law or medicine, where I chose to master it. Have a nice day. Now choose, master or slave. In truth, I who shall not be named.